Welcome to Christian Statesman. I'm your host, Zach Wagner, and this is episode 47, Lessons of History, Part 1. We all know the famous maxim, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We now find ourselves in a period of history where that adage is most applicable. Each week that goes by now finds us in a deeper and more unstable situation. We will examine specific current events through the clarifying and often unforgiving lens of history. In Part 1, we will talk a bit about international affairs. In Part 2, we will bring things a little closer to home. The resignation of the entire government of several countries, including Russia, the Netherlands, and others, portends earth-shaking international events. The resignation of Angela Merkel and her Italian counterpart is nothing short of extraordinary. This tells us clearly something is moving behind the scenes. But the primary focus at the moment has to be on China. The agitations of China around Taiwan and throughout the South China Sea are very concerning, particularly if we understand the recent past. In 1937, Japan was on the rise. They were transitioning from an agrarian state into a powerful modern industrial force with an army, air force, and navy that could rival anyone in the West. Typical Japanese ingenuity, coupled with a fanatical military-industrial state at the heart of their power structure, fueled an expansionist agenda across the Pacific Rim. Being an island country with limited natural resources forced Japan to venture far and wide to obtain the resources needed to fuel this burgeoning military. The United States saw its role to check Japanese aggression against weaker countries such as Mongolia, China, Burma, and others. And the end result was Pearl Harbor, and a war that nearly destroyed the planet. Today, the agenda is much the same, but the actors have changed. Fueled by globalist dollars since the demise of Mao, China now takes a place on the world stage with ambitions to become the predominant military and economic power in the world. Being one of the oldest civilizations, they see a natural right to rule, much as the Japanese did with their divine wind policies in the 30s. But China has the same problem that Japan did. Even though they are a large and diverse country geographically, they suffer from an enormous population and limited resources. This is particularly distressing when it comes to arable farmland and oil. China simply does not have the means to fuel their huge population and a growing military. Thus the need, either through trade or force, to scour other countries for the needed assets. China has been using a Belt and Road strategy to go into foreign countries, lend them far more money than they can pay back for infrastructure, then upon default grab the needed resources from said destitute country. We see much of this going on in Africa and South America, and it does not bode well for geopolitical stability. The Trump administration put a tremendous check on many of these actions. The Biden administration has spent much of their first week in office reversing all of the Trump restrictions. But governments around the world know that an ascendant China is bad for business in the long run, even if there might be some benefit in the short term. And so the eyes of the world are upon China and what they might perpetrate with an acquiescent Biden administration. The last week of the Trump administration was spent cementing official diplomatic recognition of Taiwan, an action in itself that sent a very pointed message to the rest of the world. The recent incursions on Taiwanese airspace by mainland Chinese air power casts a dark shadow over the stability of the region. The absurd claims of sovereign territorial ownership of the South China Sea were egregious enough, but Taiwan may be just the modern flashpoint that instigates a Pearl Harbor Redux event. If Biden shows any weakness, China will move. And the argument can easily be made that Biden must cooperate with China's aggression, lest they reveal all of their corrupt dealings with the Biden family in the past. That development would raise the specter of treason for a supposed sitting president, creating tremendous internal turmoil in America. The key question in all of this is, where does the military fall? In 1941, our military knew of a pending aggression both in Asia and Europe, yet we were woefully unprepared when the actual attacks came. Can the same be said today? Or is our military acutely aware of how compromised Biden is and are entertaining independent alternatives should China get too far out of line? The answers to these questions are not clear and may not become clear until we actually see things play out. But one thing should be very clear to the listener who will take the time to search and understand history. We should be acutely aware of the lessons history teaches about such things, and we had better be very prepared should history decide to become repetitive. Thank you for joining us today, and as always, subscribe, tell your friends, and have a very blessed day.